Hello, everybody. My name is Fred Dauber. I'm founder, president, and chief simplification officer at CAN6 Systems. We've been manufacturing access control products in Mississauga, Ontario for over 35 years. I'm very excited to introduce a new product called Webster Concierge. This product was designed from the ground up to make it easy for locksmiths to get into the access control industry. By the way, if you're finding it a little difficult to understand some of the things I'm saying, it might be because of my very strong Canadian accent. If that's the case, you may want to turn on closed captioning. To do that, just find the little CC button on the YouTube navigation bar and click on it. The good news is that as a locksmith, you already are an expert in doors, door hardware, and this gives you a big advantage over everybody else because in order for an access control system to work, the doors and the strikes all have to work. It's worthy also to note that as a locksmith, you're already in a position of trust with your customers. This gives you a big advantage as well over other competitors in the market. Everybody in business wants to make more money. One of the things that many people don't realize is that the revenue that you make, which is recurring revenue, has a much greater value to your business than any other kind of revenue. One great thing with Webster Concierge, it allows you to start earning recurring revenue. One thing I'd like to point out right at the outset is that Webster Concierge is not just a product line. It's a way of doing business, and we're going to explain to you how to do that. One really big benefit of Webster Concierge is that it totally eliminates the need for you to have any IT or computer expertise. Concierge allows you to close deals quickly, install quickly, train the user quickly, get out quickly, and minimize callbacks. The real beauty of Webster Concierge is that there is no software to install and no on-site computer required. The software is already installed on the Webster controller. You connect to it using any browser on any phone, tablet, or PC. It could not be more simple. There are two different types of Webster controllers. There's the Webster Mini, which is a single door, and it is not expandable. As you can see from the drawing, what is hooked up to it is basically a credential reader. It will have an electric strike connected to it to release the door, request to exit to unlock the door for exit. It also has some auxiliary outputs that can be used for things like triggering power-operated doors. The other member of the Webster family is called a Webster 64. It is expandable. It supports 2 or 4 doors on board, but it can be expanded up to 64 doors with expansion panels. Each Webster 64 can have up to 4 readers connected to it, control 4 lock outputs, 4 auxiliary sets of auxiliary outputs, basically everything you need to handle either 2 or 4 doors, all on board. When you want to expand a Webster 64 controller beyond 4 doors, this is the way you do it. You can add up to 31 Webster expansion panels. Each one can support up to 4 doors. It can be configured for 2 or 4 doors, just like the Webster 64 controller. You can have up to 31 of them, but the maximum overall count of readers cannot exceed 64, which is why it's called Webster 64. I thought I would give you an idea of what the physical size is of these products. They're very small, but do not be fooled into thinking that they're not powerful. because they are incredibly powerful, as I'll go into a little bit later on. When you're looking at these, keep in mind that I'm holding them in my hands, and I have really, really huge hands. And as everybody knows, if you have really big hands, you have a big brain. One very important element of any access control system are the credential readers. Since we want to make your life simple, we've decided to standardize on one single reader. And the one we've chosen is the CSR35L, which is a reader that's manufactured by Farpoint Data. Farpoint is one of the longest standing reader and credential manufacturers in North America and have been a close partner of CAN6 Systems for as long as Farpoint has been around. There's a couple of great aspects to this reader. One of them is the fact that not only does it support reading traditional, conventional access cards and fobs, it also allows you to use your phone as a mobile credential to gain access. The other aspect of this reader, which is very cool and which is why we love it, is the fact that one reader can accommodate both mounting applications. Readers typically will get either mounted on a hollow metal mullion, which are typically 1 3/4 wide, or they will get mounted on a wall. And when they're mounted on a wall, typically they would be mounted on a single gang electrical box. The great thing with this reader is that it comes with a wall mount adapter. So the one product will accommodate both mullion and wall mount. One of the reasons why that's great is that if you need different models for those two applications, you're depending on having the right counts when you go to the job site. And if you miscalculated and you got the wrong quantities of one or the other, you're going to have to go back to the shop and get more readers and come back to do the job. Having one that will accommodate both totally eliminates that problem. It's a very good thing. When you install the CSR35L reader on a hollow metal mullion, you simply throw away the adapter plate. The reader mounts directly to the hollow metal mullion. There is no back box required. When you install this reader on drywall, you'll use the supplied wall mount adapter plate. That adapter plate is designed to fasten to a standard single gang electrical box, and the type that you'll want to be using is one that is called a rework or retrofit, and we'll talk to you a little bit about that and tell you what they are. So I mentioned to you that there is a specific type of single gang electrical box that you're going to want to use. These boxes are designed specifically for retrofit, unlike regular electrical junction boxes, which you would fasten to a stud. When you're doing a retrofit, you may want to, wherever you want to put the reader, there's no guarantee there'll be a stud. What is great with these things is that you make the cutout, you slip the box in, and then there's two little wings that swing out. You fasten them, you tighten up a screw, those wings then grip onto the back of the drywall and keep the box firmly in place without the requirement to have them connected to or fastened to a stud. One of the very important aspects of putting in a system so that it works properly, stays working properly, is the wiring. What we recommend is that you use this specific Belden cable. This cable is designed specifically for use with access control applications. It has the right number of conductors, all within one cable. It has also the right type of wire for the different functions. Don't try and save money on wiring. You're going to regret it. You will find that this cable is somewhat more expensive, but it does the job, and all of the conductors you need are already in it, and it will all be the right ones. Don't make a shortcut on cabling or you will regret it. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about the credentials that are used with these Farpoint readers. The credentials use a technology called DesFire. It's a MIFARE technology, specifically DesFire, and that technology uses AES 128-bit encryption. And these credentials have to date not been cloned. It doesn't mean they never will be, but to date they have not been cloned in spite of a lot of people trying to do it. And I will explain to you why that's important. So what exactly is credential cloning? Basically, think of it in terms of keys. A customer will bring in a key. They want to make a copy. You get a compatible blank. You put it in the machine. And basically, you copy exactly whatever that key is onto another blank. And now the guy's got two identical keys. Card cloning, credential cloning is exactly the same way. Basically, there's equipment available which will allow you to take a customer's access card, read the data off of it, store it in memory, and then write that data back onto a blank card, thereby having created an exact duplicate of that credential. They're 100% identical. There's no way to tell one from the other. The whole notion of card cloning has been around for a long time, but the equipment to do it was not readily available or was not public knowledge how you can do it. That has all now changed pretty dramatically because the device that I just described to you that can read a card, save the data, write it back into a blank card, that is available in a kit form on Amazon for under 20 bucks. And that includes the reader writer and sample cards and fobs, which basically means it's super easy to clone cards. Not all cards. The cards that we're using are, as I mentioned, have not been cloned to date. So here's what the kit looks like. It's a little handheld reader writer and then some blank fobs. To make a copy of somebody's card, you take it, hold it up to the reader, press the read button, it stores the data in memory. You put a blank card up against it, you press write, and it takes that data, writes it into the new credential, and you've made a direct copy of it. For people that care to know, the vulnerability to cloning is the biggest with 125 kilohertz credentials. These are the ones that have been around for ever, 20 years, well, probably longer than that. There was not an issue for the longest time because the equipment to be able to clone them was very limited. Now it's readily available and dirt cheap. Therefore, clonable credentials is really no longer acceptable to be sold, in my opinion. So you can think of this cloner as essentially a $20 pocket-size universal key cutting machine. If you sell a clonable credential solution to a customer, they may end up having less security than they did with keys. Should be noted that non-clonable credentials and their readers are more expensive than clonable versions. If you get in a competitive situation and people are quoting readers that seem to be crazy cheap, you can pretty much guarantee that those readers use credentials which are clonable. And I would suggest that you would not want to be selling that to your customer because they might be very disappointed. And as the saying goes, you get what you pay for. Let's talk a little bit about wiring. From an install standpoint, you are going to be very comfortable with everything around the door. In fact, you're probably already cutting electric strikes in for other access control companies because they're not comfortable doing that. However, there will be requirement to run wiring. The facility that I've shown here, and this is basically our own building. This is a typical industrial complex, and there's hundreds of thousands of these. They all have one thing in common. There's office areas in the front which always have suspended ceilings. Suspended ceilings make running wires super easy. You lift up the tiles, get your wires up there, you put the tiles back, and you're done. For these kind of sites, do not have reservations about taking on the wiring for them. You may have some challenges in the first few until you get really comfortable, but it is a simple environment to be able to run wires in. However, there are installations that are not friendly for running wires. This is a picture of what some of them might look like. These are not industrial complexes. None of those buildings that you're seeing in there have nice suspended ceilings that you can just get up in there and throw your cables and do your stuff. If you're asked to do an install in a facility like this, I recommend strongly that you hire an electrical contractor to do the wiring for you. Alternatively, you may want to just pass on the job and go on fishing for ones which are more suited that you can make more money on. Here's another example of a building where you would not want to be taking on the wiring yourself. Same deal, hire an electrical contractor to do the wiring or pass on the job. This is a picture of the vestibule in our building, the front door. It's typical of what you'll find in industrial facilities. You'll notice the suspended ceiling, super easy to get up there to run your wiring. The other thing that is worthy to note is that if it's a single door system, then pretty much all the wiring is going to be right in the vicinity of the door, and that makes life very, very simple. You're probably going to find a lot of customers are going to want to control just the front door. One thing to keep in mind is that even though they say they're never going to want to add more doors, it usually ends up being wrong. What tends to happen is they put in the one door, it works great, they like the system, they love your service, and then they start thinking of, oh, there is another door in the back where I think would be nice to add some access control as well. So that being the case, remember I said there's two different types or two different sizes of Webster controllers. There's the Webster Mini, which is one door not expandable. And then there's the Webster 64, which can go from 2 up to 64 doors. My suggestion is that even though the guy swears he's never going to add another door, quote him for a Webster 64 provision for 2 doors. And we're going to talk about provisioning in a little bit. Only if he balks at that, requote it based on the Webster Mini. The reason is that the price difference is not huge, and if I'm correct, and I usually am when it comes to this, and they do want to add later, you're already gold because the controller you've got there can handle up to 4 doors on board. So, but it is a well-known fact that access control systems tend to grow. It's also good to remember that the billing module for the Webster Concierge doors is that there is a minimum 2-door subscription fee. So even if the guy only puts in a Mini and only does 1 door, you will be paid and making money based on a 2-door subscription. More money for you. It's a good thing. When you look at a Webster controller, they're quite tiny, and it's easy to assume that that means that they're not powerful. That's absolutely not the case. The Webster system does 98% of virtually everything that small system users need. It does so simply, intuitively, and with minimum support required by you. It in fact is as powerful as the vast majority of full PC-based access control systems. Remember I said you need to target small, simple? You are going to run into cases where people will want something that's not small and not simple. So if they start talking about things like controlling elevators, they want two-factor authentication, fingerprint readers, facial recognition readers, photo badging, or TV integration. This is not a simple project and you should pass on it. These things are challenging even for very seasoned integrators. If you want to avoid getting yourself into a giant pickle, be really careful not to get into these kind of jobs because they're a sinkhole for time and money and support. So the word is only take jobs that are simple. The good news is that most small jobs, 1 to 10 doors, are simple. Be ready to say no to large, complex jobs. Remember, you're after volume. Think McDonald's. Another thing that you may be asked to do that you need to be on the lookout for is to quote, take over projects. This is a project that has access control already. There's existing readers, cards, strikes, and wiring, and for whatever reason, they're not happy and would like to put in something new. These are incredibly dangerous. If you were to undertake it and you reuse all of the gear, except obviously the PC or whatever it is they had, you got to remember that there are going to be hiccups. Um, you got to also remember that CanSec will not be in a position to help you because they know nothing about the reused products. So you got to be really, really careful with these. I can tell you from long, long years of experience that they can be a real nightmare. However, that does not mean that you have to lose the job. You can take the project but replace everything. One other important thing to know here is you got to make sure the customer knows that they're going to have to re-enter all their setup parameters and user data. Depending on how many card holders you have, that could be a fair amount of work. The good news is that they only have to do it once. You got to be careful because they will likely want to offload that onto you, and you do not want to go there because it can be massively time consuming. So make sure they know they have to re-enter all their setup and parameters and all their user data, and don't back down on that and don't make any exceptions. So what are some of the benefits to you of a Webster Concierge system? First of all, simple to set up and operate. No static IP address setup, no port forwarding, no VPNs required. In other words, you don't need to have to know how to do any of those things or even know what they are. There is no software to install. You're going to install the Webster controller. The software is already installed on that device. So there's no on-site PC required. And also, importantly, no network or IT knowledge required at all. All of this bundled together will allow you to get in and out of jobs quickly with no callbacks. One of the big benefits of Webster Concierge is that you will be able to access that Webster controller from any browser on any phone, laptop, PC, anywhere in the world where there's internet access. And all of that is achieved without requirement for doing any IT jiggery pokery because you don't want to jiggery pokery. It's not good. One of the great advantages of Webster Concierge is that each controller gets assigned its own URL. You can type that URL into any browser on a phone, laptop, or PC from anywhere in the world where there's internet access, and you will be immediately connected to that device, no matter where they are. One of the interesting benefits that this allows you is because you would be able to, with customers' approval, uh, access their unit as well. It means that you can go to them and offer them support so that if they get stuck, they're trying to set up something and they forgot how it works and they need help, uh, they can call you. You can connect to their unit and help sort them out. In some cases, they may even want you to do what's called managed access, which basically means that they really don't want to do anything. They want to do it. They want you to do it. So if they're going to add a new user, they will just tell you who it is and they'll trust you to take care of it. Same thing with voiding cards and changing schedules, etc. There is a whole live, real marketplace for managed access because you will be able to access their unit from anywhere. The door is open for you to go back to these guys and pitch to them some support service agreement, which of course will mean more recurring revenue for you. One of the other nice benefits with Webster Concierge is that those controllers connect every night back to a firmware update server in the cloud, and it will check to see if the Webster firmware is the latest version. If it's not, it will be downloaded, installed, the Webster controller will reboot, and now you're always going to be up to date with the latest features and performance enhancements. And it all happens automatically. You don't have to do anything. There's another great benefit to Webster Concierge is as long as the Webster Mini or Webster 64 unit and its associated expansion panels are under continuous concierge coverage, the warranty never expires. In some cases, 4 doors isn't going to be enough, and you're going to need to use one or more Webster 64 expansion panels. The Webster Concierge program makes adding those to the system super easy. It does not require you setting up static IP addresses or port forwarding or any such nonsense. All it requires is that you go to the Webster 64 system, you go to the function that says add panels, and you then type in the number that's on the label on the expansion panel, and it automatically finds it and connects to it. Even if that expansion panel gets moved to another place on the LAN or even another LAN, that panel will always still be found using that ID number. Um, Again, you don't need to understand any of the messy stuff in the background. Webster Concierge takes care of all that for you. We mentioned the importance of generating recurring revenue, and it is important for the reasons I mentioned. The way it works is that we bill you for the subscription fees for the systems you have installed. We bill it on a monthly basis against a credit card on file. You then decide on how much to charge your customers, not CanSec. You know who can pay more and who won't pay more, much better than what we do. So we try and stay out of that aspect of your business. And again, the other opportunity that lies here is the one I mentioned previously, is that because you will be able to access their system anytime, anywhere, you're in a good position to offer them support services to help them if they need to set up a schedule or there's something they don't know how to do or they just forgot how to do. That's definitely worth money. And again, that money is all money you're keeping because we don't charge for that. That's your business. But once you have the ability to connect to these devices from anywhere, it makes perfect sense to try and turn that into some additional recurring revenue with your customers. See how important recurring revenue is? We've got 3 slides in here. So this basically just reiterates the opportunity I've mentioned twice, I think already, in that once you're able to connect to your customer's system from any device, from anywhere, with their permission, of course, it makes good sense to offer them support services or complete system management services for a monthly fee. So I want to talk to you now a little bit about the power of provisioning. Webster Concierge 64 controllers and expansion panels can be provisioned for either 2 doors or 4 doors. You only pay for the number of doors you need. Here's a good way to think of it. Essentially, you only pay for what you need. So although a Webster 64 controller can support up to 4 doors, if you only need 2, you purchase it provisioned for only 2 doors. Essentially, if you only need half, you're only going to pay for half. If the customer decides later on that they want to add more doors, you can simply purchase a provisioning upgrade code from us, which basically means you're now going to buy the other half of the panel. We push it out to the controller and those extra readers get activated and you're off to the circus. There's absolutely no additional hardware to add when you add those other doors. So no notion of expansion modules you have to plug in or add on. Everything is already there. As soon as we push out that provisioning upgrade code, the other 2 doors are turned on and you're good to go. And by the way, that provisioning benefit also applies to expansion panels, not only to the Webster 64 panels. Remember I said the goal is to try and make this really, really simple. So one of the questions that will come up is a guy would say, well, I've got a 7-door system. I need a quote for it. We want to make sure it's easy for you to know what exactly you're going to need to do that job. And to do that, we came up with a tool called a Webster Configurator. So Webster Configurator basically is a tool that you run from the website where you would enter the number of doors that the guy wants. The tool is set up to do from 1 to 16 doors. If you've got somebody wanting more than 16 doors, you want to give us a call anyways, so we can help you through it. 1 to 16 is going to cover probably 98% of everything you're ever going to sell. So the whole idea is we wanted a way that all you needed to do was to know how many doors is required, and then we would take it from there and tell you exactly what you need. So basically from the website, you would go to the Webster configurator, enter the number of doors, and the tool will generate a complete equipment list for you, and I'll show you exactly what that equipment list looks like. So just to reiterate, the Webster configuration tool is available on the websterconcierge.com website. It creates a PDF. PDF can be downloaded, so you can email it to somebody. You can email it back to your distributor or CanSec and ask for a quote based on it. The PDF, as I'll show you, because I've got a sample one coming up, it contains the part numbers, descriptions of the equipment, the quantities, and also pictures of what those part numbers are. We know our part numbers pretty much by heart, but nobody else cares about them. So when you generate the list, every product line item has a picture, so you know what it looks like. Important point is it does not contain pricing. Pricing, you would, for instance, if you were bought through distribution, you would download the PDF, figure out the number of doors, send it over to your distributor, and they will quote you pricing for it. And as I promised, here's what it looks like. So this is a type of a PDF that would be generated if you entered 8 doors. And essentially, it will tell you everything that you need, all the parts, the quantity of the parts in order to build that system. The only thing where it won't give you the quantity is the number of credentials, because that'll vary from site to site. So we can't figure that out for you. You would have to fill that in. But everything else is there, and that's right down to door contacts, which we recommend are always used. The control units, how many readers you would need, what kind of power supply and what type of power supply you would need, the batteries to go along with it. Just a quick note on batteries. You always want to use a real good quality power supply. It's super important. And you also want to make sure they are battery backed up. If not, and there's a power outage, those doors are not working, people are not getting in, they probably will not be very happy. So there are places where you may want to try and save money, but battery backup and very good quality power supplies are not one of those places. So I'd mentioned multiple times that Webster's simple and intuitive, but has the power of a full-based PC solution. The next couple of slides, I'll give you an idea of what the capabilities are, and I'm guessing you will probably be surprised. So basically, here's a comparison of the Concierge Mini and Webster 64 Concierge. You'll notice that all of the numbers there are the same except for the number of readers. Webster Mini, as I mentioned, it is a single door system, not expandable. Webster 64 Concierge can support up to 64 doors. Both of them support 5,000 cards. Even though the Mini is smaller, less expensive, it has exactly the same high power capability as the Webster 64. Here's some of the features here that are relative or important. Hardware extended, I mentioned. If you're on Concierge, your controllers are all extended, the warranty is extended indefinitely. Another interesting thing to note is that on Concierge connected controller or supported controllers, if our tech support guys need to connect to it to troubleshoot or do something, they can do so without you having to send a technician to the site. Obviously, we do not connect to anybody's site without their explicit permission, but with that, we can connect to it, troubleshoot it, restart it, re-provision it, basically do everything that we could do if we had a technician that went to the site. And again, you don't need to send your technician to the site. Global accessibility, no IT setup required, software automatically updated. Let me just jump over to the next slide here. So this one's a lot more interesting because it's got some of the cool features and functionality. You'll notice in here there's a whole bunch of things, and I said it does pretty much what most typical PC-based systems do. Here's really the validation of that. It has things like first man rule, where basically you can set doors to unlock automatically on a schedule, but they won't unlock until somebody shows up. So on your front door, if you have it unlock at 8:30, that's great. But if there's a big snowstorm and nobody gets here till 10:30, you don't want the door flapping in the breeze. We have that covered. We have the ability for people to double swipe and do an unlock maintained, providing they've got the appropriate provision. We can also put readers in lockout mode. If you, for some reason, there's a chemical spill, you don't want people going in there, you can lock out the put a reader in lockout mode. However, people with appropriate authority can get in and bypass that. Here's another real interesting thing. The system continues to operate during a LAN outage. All the decisions are made inside the Webster controller. It's not going anyplace else for anything. So even if the LAN is down, your access control system is going to be humming along quite happily. Supports program holiday days. It can generate forced entry alarms, door held open alarms, door held open pre-alerts. We can send text and email notifications of certain predefined conditions. There's multifunction alarm relay that can be used to sound buzzers or flash lights. There's also a relay that allows it to live happily with power door operators. Produces audit reports, supports daylight savings time, and last but not least, you'll notice at the bottom, elevators, it's no and no. As I mentioned, you don't want to go near elevator control, so we do not support it on the Webster 64 or. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this little video and listen to my big long rants. We would love to get you on board to work with us and join the Webster Concierge team. We've got lots of experience working with particularly smaller dealers. The Webster product, as I mentioned, was specifically designed to be locksmith friendly, and we make sure that that would not be a disappointment to anybody. Further information, call sales 1-877-545-7755, press 2 for sales, or you can email us at sales@cansec.ca. You can also go to the website, which is websterconcierge.com. Thanks a lot for listening. Stay safe and have a great day.